How did you join the CIA?
I was at Iowa. They came on campus. I had started a political science degree, and I wanted to use that creative Steven Spielberg gene that was flowing through me. I wanted to make movies. This is the '80s. They're the VHS, the videotape wars, which you don't even know about, were being fought in the Supreme Court between VHS and Beta. Apple was a new thing. The Apple software systems were being sued and copied and everything else. It was stone knives and bearskins. Uh, but I added the broadcasting and film part of my degree halfway through. I have an idea. I was always going to be a lawyer. I was just going to be a lawyer from the beginning of time. Like I got accepted to law school. Just was like, I'm tired. I can't go to school anymore. But 5 years in a row, I'm just done. I'll go back. Right. And they came on campus and they interviewed through the Advanced Placement Center. And I interviewed. It was during Iran Contra, the Nicaragua stuff, and there's a lot of protests. It was cool, and it took about a year. They kind of lost my application, but it took a year of stuff, and that was '84, and I got in September of 80, the fiscal year before the '86 fiscal year started. It was September of '85. Uh, and that's it. They interviewed, and I and decided they you do this stuff, and back in the day, not online. You actually had to fill out applications, and people came and you did interviews. You dealed around, and then fly to DC, and you kind of interview of different departments. And since I had a degree in television, and I was somewhat different because the agency is a paper-driven world. It was certainly an Ivy League driven, write me a report, write me a memo kind of place. And I was like, I can show you apartheid. Back then, I can show you terrors. I can show you Gaddafi. I can show you all these things. And I don't need to write it. I can think Chinese. And so I was sort of the zealot for getting video as an intelligence tool, Vident, I used to call it. And it helped that we had a president at the time, Ronald Reagan, who was into images, and that's how he thought. So it helped that although we didn't make things for the White House unless we were told to, and they're identified as agency material because it's illegal to do it. Yes, um, it helped that he was into this, and a lot of things happened. So we were doing a lot of videos for uh, the NSC. There was a Achille Lauro and airplane hijackings and things like that. A lot of Soviet defectors at the time, so we were able to make videos on that and help out. So that's where I landed. I actually landed in the library, and I was a media TV analyst. I'd watched 20 hours of TV a day. Yeah, not a lot. And then that's where my glasses came from. I started wearing glasses at that job, actually. And if on Face the Nation, the minister of Syria was on, I'd watch it. You write down what the guy said, what he talked about, and you send it to the Syria desk or the bio desk, and whoever else might be interested in the Syria foreign minister on television. And that's what we did. And then I index and put in a central repository. And then the operations guys who I supported took note of my brain that can remember video things. And so they hired me to go into propaganda operations. So I was a direct hire, actually during a hiring freeze from the DI to the DO. And then I spent the rest of my career in that, basically.
Now, this is towards the end of the Cold War. Can you tell me more about what that was, how that influenced your job towards the end of the Cold War
Oh,
and raising it live TV too?
it was I mean, the day that Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, we were watching. And it was like that changed everything we were doing immediately. Uh, because there was always going after the Soviets. That's enemy number one, caused them pain. But when you say that, now we're supporting the Berlin Wall effort. And so it did. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out using my skills or thought processes, how do we get this to happen? And so we pumped out a lot of stuff, radios, the print, and the supporting assets who were uh, working on the ground trying to do this. And to cut to the end, there is a debate and discussion about how impactful was our propaganda or media operations in making a change. And we'll never know. We couldn't do customer surveys. We can't ask. There has been some discussion, and Some will say, yeah, well, it had an impact. Yeah, it didn't have an impact. And that's, you do what you do. Uh, but we were fully focused on it. And I remember I was actually talking to a gentleman at dinner who was a professor in Washington, D.C. area on Eastern Europe in that area. And he was telling me they'll never get rid of the Berlin Wall. They'll look at the map and see how Czechoslovakia is connected from one to the other, and the Soviets never do that. I go home and there's Tom Brokaw in front of the Berlin Wall watching it being chipped down. I mean, within an hour. So much for that expert. Don't believe that expert. That's a true story. It's like, well, I won't send that report in. Uh, but things were happening fast. And from my background, was it was kind of like, think of the craziest thing. Anything was fair game, as long as we get funding for it, and we have plenty. What do you want to do? What can we do to impact people's thought processes and the way that we want them to potentially think? Um, which is pretty much my belief, was just be entertaining and tell the truth. That was kind of my two philosophies. You don't have to be deceptive or disinformation and that crap. Just shine the bright lights on them and get into the people, and things happen. That was pretty much still true today. Um, if you're on the side of right, if you're on the right of right, that's true today. If you're on the side of darkness, it's not true. So that's what we. So we could think of any crazy thing, and we did some crazy things. And there's been some discussion and some podcasts and things about some of these things, and they cover some of it. And I'm not going to talk about it, but it was fun. It was a job. I hit the ground running every day. It was like, what can I do to screw up the Soviets? That was like my main. I used to train as part of my job on our department to new hires, and I'd say my job is to cause the Soviets pain.
So moving forward a little bit, when the Cold War ended, how were you and the CIA affected now that the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc is gone?
Well, I can only talk about me. Um, sorry, it's allergy and everything else season. Man, there's snow outside, but I get allergies. Well, I mean, it's well documented. Things that happen to the agency. For me, I mean, I have my own personal story. I mean, all stories are personal. Um, I was in the field. I was now collecting domestically as part of executive orders, um, doing some recruiting, and uh, with the aim to get out. Right? So, uh, I was going to go overseas, and it was sort of like my wife was supportive, but it would have been better for my future, my marriage, everything else, and for family if I didn't. So I said I have to stay in and not go for agency TDYs, or not get reassigned, which is a career killer, or just get out, which was a hard thing to do back then. So um, I made the process to get out, and that's how I ended up at Motorola, because uh, my time in the 90s, by the early 90s, was sort of felt like it was done for the thing that I really liked to do, which was the video and imaging part. But even when I was in the field, I was always sort of like a communications guy. I got, I have three of those awards there for various actually wars, collecting intelligence. And I made some videos when you get an award, and the guy says, this really happens in your life. You get feedback. And the guys from this particular government agency I was supporting said, but you did save lives. All right. So I'll take that. Okay. I'll, I'll hang on that 40 years. That's, it's in the early 90s. So I'll hang on that 40 years later, basically, almost exactly, um, as having had an impact. All right. Other things, the awards, lots of just groups, lots of stuff. But that was my story, and the things that I was good at, and the people I trained, and the um, momentum that my little group of zealots, I think we started with, how the Cold War changed agency. There's books on it. There's for what I did. I was done. Right. I I didn't know what more I could do. I could go recruit, and I would have enjoyed it. And you look back in hindsight, because I'm old, they say, "Oh, what happens if I would have stayed in?" Well, I did it. What if? What if? What ifs can kill you. So I got out and I went into the corporate world. and to use the skills, because back then in the early 90s, there weren't that many of us. All right. It wasn't everybody and his brother was a former intelligence officer in the agency getting out. So I had a unique resume that I could leverage to my uh, advantage, which is why I went to the company, which was the best known company for using intelligence as part of its corporate strategy, because that would help me learn new skills. And I had to learn business too. I was not a business guy. Uh, when I was in the government, your job, I raised my hand and pledged allegiance to get intelligence to provide our foreign policy makers the correct information to make decisions about the foreign policy of America. That's the job. When I was in corporate, it was to maximize stockholders' dividends. It's kind of a difference, right? It's the level of importance in your heart is like, protect our country or money. So that was a whole mental twist for me. It took me a while to figure that out. But I almost said, she actually go back to the government, which showed you how bad it really was. Because I was ready to go. But you figure out what skills you want to improve, and I needed to improve business intelligence skills, writing skills, speaking, other types of skills, and that's why I went to corporate. That's where I spent 16 years.
So, other than anti-Soviet efforts, were there any like Libyan or anti-Iranian efforts that you did, or mostly focused on the Soviets?
No, we did everybody. In fact, my first book, Secret Wars, is about Libya, is about Gaddafi, because he was like a gift, propaganda gift. He's like every time he came on and did something, it was like clip him, or do something about him, or whatever it might be. Because he was just too farcical. I mean, he was a bad guy, but it came down to making video out of him, or making stories, or telling the truth in a certain way. That was easy. You know, the hostages in Lebanon and Beirut were incredibly important. The bombing of the Beirut Spirit of Lebanon and all that sort of stuff was still sort of fresh. William Buckley was happening, and you know, Pan Am 103, and all those things were happening. So you're doing, all right. It's not as if it's just Soviets. I mean, we have perspectives, we call them, across the various uh, um, intelligence requirements, and you fulfill them. Some have the money to pay for them, and some have more importance. And it's a cycle. Everything in life, everything in history, everything in time is not linear. It's a cycle. So you're cycling through the needs. Iranians, um, I don't know how much I really spent much time on the Iranians. It was Libya, the Cubans, the narco traffickers, Chinese, and the Soviets,
Can
Eastern
you tell me
Europe.
about
I
the
mean,
Chinese? You remember Tiananmen Square massacre? What else?
yes, yeah. That was, and there was just it was actually sort of towards the end of my time. It was everybody. I remember the Chinese ops guys telling me that they were just surprised. They were fooled. They were up all night trying to figure out what the hell was going on, because they were just you know their analysis was fooled by what happened at Tenement, because big events change big things. So I don't really think I spent as much time on China. I'm trying to think about it. It's been a long time that I did. If I had to make a list, they're the bottom of the list. Okay, this early '90s. I went there. I can't remember if I went there with Motorola. I think my first time there was with Motorola, um, right after I got out the agency. But they were, I don't know if they were, can't say they were not the threat, but it came down to what we could do propaganda wise. I don't remember spending any time on that. It really was Eastern Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Yeah, because there was stuff going on
Can you tell me about
in
the
our
books you've written?
books. I finished my fourth one. My first book, called Secret Wars, #1 Amazon bestseller forever, for weeks and weeks and weeks. North wrote a review, Dewey wrote a review, Mark Graney did The Gray Man, Kevin Maurer, yeah, Kevin did No Easy Day, book No Easy Day. good reviews. And it's sold really well. Autobiographical up to the point where I ran out of biography and had to make things up. Actually, I had written that, typed it, um, and it was ready to go in the old style in manila envelopes, printed it out with letters to agents in New York because there was no email something, because I forget that didn't around the, the the week before 9/11. Here I have a book about Libyan terrorism in '86. It's kind of centered around the Bell Disco and the bombing of Tripoli. In fact, those are the key parts. I was there. I was around that time, and uh, boom, 9/11. So I rip open the things. I rewrite my cover letter saying, if not a book about terrorism, state-sponsored terror, which is uh, that's the debate. Um, Now, then when? So I rewrote the cover letter, waited till things kind of cleared out, resent it. I actually got some feedback saying, letters back then, of course, that said, "Hey, like it, but there was this fear of terror." Which ended up, so I kind of sat back and ended up being wrong, right? Because all the 2000s were Brad Thor or whatever, Clancy. I mean, or Clancy was before that, but terrorism became the topic, and they took off. And I was busy doing other things and Motorola and the like, and raising families, so I just let the book sit. And in 2014, I said I got to get this book out. Various things happened in my life or around me. I said I got to do this now, and so I rewrote it. I could actually go on the internet and see what things looked like. I was making up off of road maps back in the old days, and wrote a book based on the Libya propaganda operations. Agency has to review. They don't approve. They review, of course. They reviewed all my books, and as they should, as I agreed to, and it did really well. It's not the best written book. I should go back and recraft it because I'm a better writer now, but I have other things to do. Still sells. Um, then I was going to write a sequel to that. And I had actually, Kevin Maurer told me, don't write a sequel. It's historical fiction, although I won an award in the historical fiction category for the book. And write a contemporary. People want contemporary. They want corporate espionage. Write a book on corporate espionage, which is a lousy phrase, never say it. But so I did. I scrapped the sequel and I started trying to write a contemporary spy book. You know, not a bang bang like Gray Man or what Jack Carr writes now, but sort of a more thinking John le Carre, Frederick Forsyth kind of book. And I came up with my little Spy Doubles group, which is half bang bang, half not. And so I just finished off the trilogy. Those three books came out last November, and now I'm kind of getting out of espionage. I want to get out. I run that cycle in my brain right now. Maybe I'll do some novellas or some origin stories just online for the fun of it because people like my spy doubles and they want more, but I left it open if I want to go down the road to do another one. But right now I need something different. So I'm turning to a different kind of thriller for myself. But joegoldbergbooks.com, buy them all, buy them for your friends. I'll autograph them. I'll give you a sucker, whatever it might be. Yeah, but the thing about that in being in writing is you meet authors. You go to conferences, you learn other perspectives, you get different skills. I'm going to go to 2 conferences this year, and I you go on podcasts. And I did one on a podcast, and I got a phone call from Alan Warren saying, "Do you want to be a co-host on the House of Mystery radio show on NBC, which is one of the top podcasts for crime thriller originally, sort of, but he's branched out into espionage and other kind of thing." And I'm the host along with and others. I was the first of these 4th thriller espionage books. So I got a chance to interview James Patterson and Jack Carr and Greg Hurwitz. I mean, big name. Nothing gets bigger than Patterson, but so I can learn. For me, it's like an education. I tell them I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes, and because I get a chance to, through this little writing gig that I did, and I do have a broadcasting background and the like. Although I'm really nasally right now, I'm sorry. I could turn on my broadcaster voice and I could talk like this all the time, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk like this. Um, I get a chance to meet these uh, people who are creative, who want to tell stories. Uh, I write as a mechanism to tell stories. So, am I a writer? I want to be a storyteller. Right? Are you an author? An author makes books. Okay, so I got books. So I'm an author, and writing is my tool to tell stories. So I hope I'm telling good stories, and I get a chance to meet other people who have the trying to tell stories, have creative vision, and different means to do that. And same thing was actually sort of the same thing in the agency, because in the agency, which is a weird place, at least back in my day. Um, if you needed to have something on Soviet Greek front organizations, there was a guy. You go down the hall, go through that thing, and go see Bill, and he's going to know everything about it. Right? There was an expert on everything, and they were everywhere. And he asked them what you did for a living. And they're like, I make a newsletter. Why? Because I always made a newsletter on this topic. Okay, great. Uh, and that was so you learned from this eclectic bunch of people who were just incredibly interesting, who had a passion to know about this thing. Some of them big things, nuclear warheads or missile systems or some front groups or me video. And kind of the same in the writing world. You have these different kind of writers, different backgrounds. There are patterns that you have to follow to keep get published, blah blah blah. But um, it's enjoyable. Like meeting you, it's enjoyable to get out, to talk, and to get different perspectives. Right? I may not just be. That's why you read other people's books to open up the ideas and keep a notebook close by. It just That's how I am.